Hello and welcome. Today I have driven Kevin down to Aussie Disposals because he wanted to buy some military apparel. He's bought himself a tin helmet and he told me that he has got me a special gift that will blow me away, so I can't wait to see it. This week the world commemorated the Allied invasion of Normandy, also known as D-Day. It's the 75th anniversary, and because of this I was inspired to do a military themed makeover. So I started off today with 4 models. So the first model here is this Centurion tank. It has its tracks missing. The turret turns well, which is good, but it has no barrel or machine gun, and it needs a repaint. Secondly, there is this Saladin armoured car. Again, the gun barrel was a weak point and has snapped off and is missing. The third one is an M3 personnel carrier. It's an American vehicle. This is a half track. The tracks are missing. The front tyres have been set fire to by the previous owner, probably to simulate battle damage, and it's been painted blue. The fourth one is a Saracen 6-wheeled armoured car. The wheels on this one are particularly bad. They have broken and are all wonky, and I don't think you can buy replacements, so that's going to be a bit of a problem. And also the gun turret has no gun. That has been snapped off completely, so I'm going to have to source a replica part for that. So after the initial 4, I thought, hang on, I've got a couple of other military vehicles here, like this DUKW, which was an amphibious vehicle used by the Americans. It's got a wheel missing and no paint on it, so I thought, well, that qualifies for a makeover, so I'll add that to the mix. And then I've got this little Land Rover Jeep too, which is rather cute, but I notice it needs a repaint and the occupant is missing. So I shall see if I can get a spare occupant to fix this one up. So I ordered some spare parts online, and I get tracks and a turret, some more tracks, wheels and all sorts of bits and pieces. Here's a close-up of the replica turret for the Saladin 6-wheel armoured car. It has a lot of flashing on the edge there, and it looks like it's been hit in the rear by a shell, so it's not the best quality and will require some cleaning up. There's also a seam on the barrel and some more flashing on that side. But overall it's not too bad, and I can see some potential for this, so that's definitely an option. Now the Saracen 6-wheeled armoured car, I bought a replacement turret for that, and it comes complete with machine gun, or gun, whatever it is, maybe a cannon even. So that should be a simple swap over. I'll take the old one off and put this new one in its place. So that should look quite good. For the Duck, the amphibious vehicle, I've got a couple of spare tyres there for it. And the little Land Rover, I actually managed to source a new driver with steering wheel, and he's got a steel helmet on, similar to Kevin's. So he's going to look good in there. Once I've painted this up, I'll stick him in there. I'll paint him up too, and this should look brand new. I'm quite excited by that. So this Saladin I'm looking at here is an original, and it's in such good condition that I thought I would keep it in that condition and not do a makeover. However, I'm using it as reference to see the dimensions of a barrel that I'm going to try and recreate. I've bought this aluminium tubing from the local model shop. It comes in 2 sizes. This one is 1mm and this one is 2mm in diameter. So I'm hoping I can fabricate a new barrel out of this material. So now I'm looking at the original barrel that I've got as a sample, and it looks like the muzzle brake on the end would suit the 2mm tubing. So I'm thinking, well, this is going to be easy. I can use the 1mm tubing inside the 2mm tubing, and I'll have a perfectly scaled barrel. But unfortunately it doesn't look that good. the 1mm tubing is way too thin and flimsy. So I need something a little bit fatter. See, the actual barrel is 1.7mm and the tubing is 1mm. So it's almost half the diameter, which is no good to me. So I look for something else to use as a barrel, and I find the perfect solution. It's the exact right size drill. If I can drill it into this 2mm tubing and make the muzzle brake, or the tip of the barrel from the tubing, the barrel from the drill, and the collar that secures it to the turret, I could be on the right track to making something that looks original. I'm using these plastic vice clamps so I don't crush the pipe unnecessarily. Now I'm using the exact size drill of the barrel to drill into the 2mm tubing and actually enlarge it slightly. Now this is not as difficult as I thought it would be. Because of the flexible properties of the tubing, it's actually kind of self-centralizing itself over the drill bit. You can see I burst through the wall there, but that doesn't matter because I only want to use half of this material, like that much. And I think that's going to look good on the end. So I'm going to use the 1.5mm drill bit and the 2mm tubing. I'm going to marry it all together and make something that resembles a barrel. So I've just got to cut this tubing off, which I've enlarged with the drill. I'm just measuring how deep I've gone so I can have a guide as to where to cut it with my Dremel and cutting disc. There we go. It looks a bit rotten at the moment, but I'm going to hit it with a file and flatten off the ends and make it just the right length. So it's a great diameter, it looks almost original. Just got to cut it down a little bit. Now I did this about 4 times because as I cut them down, they kept flying off across the room, and you think I could find them. They're there somewhere, but I have no idea where. So eventually I cut it off in a shoebox and caught the piece as it flew away in the confines of the cardboard box. So there's a tip. Literally, I said, there is the tip when I saw it. I'm going to have to drill into the turret assembly to fit this into position. So before I do that, I cut off the nub of the old barrel. So I've got a larger surface area in which to drill. I've drilled a hole in my new vice clamps here to accommodate the pivot point for the turret so I don't crush it in the vice. Now I tighten it up and I drill as accurately as possible in the center of the barrel housing, and that is where the drill is going to go. And I'm going to put a collar on the other end up next to the turret to conceal the join and make it look original. And I'm gluing it into position with some of this Star Bond super glue that I was luckily enough to be given. Oops, knocked it out of there. I've just adjusted the position of the collar that's going to sit up against the turret. And now I'm putting a little bit of glue into the hole that I drilled. And here is the drill bit and the 2 aluminium sleeves combined to make one assembly. And I think it looks pretty good. I can't wait to see this on the model. I think it's going to be difficult to tell an original and the one I've just made apart. So here, for comparison reasons, I'm doing a quick check of the lengths and breadths and widths and all that. And it doesn't look too bad. Not exact, of course, but pretty close. I'm going to give it a fine coat of this surface primer, and that'll tie it all together and make it look even better than it did before. Look at that. I'm happy with that. That's much better than I anticipated. Now these wheels, because the axles are on the inside of the body, I haven't removed them. I've just masked the tyres off and given them a light coat of some undercoat. Now for the Centurion barrel. Again, I'm going to use a different size drill and again some aluminium tubing. This time it's a little bit longer, so I'm going to have to fill the flutes on the end of the drill there with a small amount of model filler there. Just dabbing it in with my finger to pack it into the flutes, which are the channels on the drill where the waste product is expelled from the hole. I'm sanding it very lightly. I'm actually optimistic that I can maybe make it a little bit wider at the base where it meets the turret. But at the end of the day that didn't happen, so it's not an exact replica of the original that you're looking at there, but it's quite close. To get the turret off, I've got to remove the base. So first off, I pre-drill the centre of the large rivets on the base. That way I can tap them later to put screws in to refit the base. Then I use a larger drill to take off the head of the rivet and leave the base off with a small flat-bladed screwdriver like that. Now I'm able to remove the turret, and I'm using a very fine drill here to drill into where the barrel is going to be secured. There. There's a close-up of it there. And this is the barrel going into position, the one I've just filled with the body filler, and it actually looks quite good. Now I've got a needle drill here, very fine needle drill, and I'm using it in this hand chuck because I'm drilling a hole to replace the machine gun that's missing also. I actually stuck myself in the thumb with this drill, so I resorted to putting it in the vise in the end to make the process a little bit safer. And here for comparison is a pin with the collar that I cut to fit over the extension that represents the machine gun, and there's a quick look at the two side by side to see how it looked. Turned out good. Now this half track here, the M2 personnel carrier, these tyres are going in the bin because somebody set fire to them, and I'm going to have to find some spare ones out of one of my buckets here in the hobby room. You will probably remember that I've got some tracks for these rear rollers. I've drilled out the rivets to remove the base again so I can get to the turret. I've got to remove this and get rid of it because I've got a replacement turret, if you remember. I'm just gripping it with these long nose pliers, and then otherwise it would spin, you see. Now I'm drilling out the base of the rivet, but I don't want to go through the actual hull, so I stop short and I end up forcing it out with these long nose pliers. There it goes, lovely. And there's the original size hole, so I haven't damaged that at all. Now I remembered as I was looking through my bits and pieces, I also had this black, totally black tank transporter. And I thought, do you know what? This is getting out of control. I'm going to do this as well today. So I'm going to have a whole fleet of military vehicles at the end to show. Now I'm using this caustic soda. It's only the second time I've used it, so I'm still experimenting. And I'm chucking all these bits in to get the paint off. And to my surprise, the green paint ended up coming out bright yellow. So it's gone from like D-Day colours to Desert Storm. I have no idea why that happened. If anyone can answer me, I'd love to know in the comments below what you think's happened. Anyway, the good news is the paint was loosened sufficiently for me to get most of it off with the old toothbrush and dental tools and prepare these models for undercoating. So this is what I'm doing now. I'm undercoating the models. That's the Saladin hull. This is the Saracen armoured car hull. They turn out great. There's some lovely details on these. This is the Centurion tank. The M3 personnel carrier, the half track. That's nice, got a jerry can on the side there. I think that is the Saracen base. The Centurion base. It's only got 4 wheels and 2 tracks. That's what those pins are for, to put the wheels on. Oh, there's the DUKW, the amphibious vehicle. It's got a spare tyre on the back. That looks nice. There's the base of the duck. I just masked the wheels off on this one. There's the Saladin turret that I stripped. Here's another Saladin base. This one's got all 6 wheels on it, which is great. I just masked them off and touch them up later. You won't know that they've been touched. Next is the little Land Rover. I've put the little replica man in it. I've just undercoated the whole thing. I shall be painting him a different colour later. And here's that black transporter. And I'm just masking off that silver rivet there that holds the trailer onto the prime mover. Because that's silver. In all the ones I've seen, it's silver, so has to stay silver. That's why I masked it off. You have to hang that one up to dry because the cabin spins around and contacts the tray, which can cause paint damage if you're not careful. To hang these models up, I used some forceps attached to magnetic clamps. Now here's a couple of other vehicles I had. Just general trucks, water trucks, etc., ambulance. I added them to the mix. And now I'm using this original Saladin as a guide for the original colour paint. I'm using this Tamiya paint XF26. Straight out of the pot. I thought this might be good if it works, but turned out a little tiny bit bright to my mind. And I thought I'd add a bit of black, but before I added the black, I actually added some darker green. And you'll see in a minute that that's worked out quite well. So I'm mixing this in a small jam jar here. Chucking a couple of, well, probably 1.5 jars of that Tamiya green, a little bit of thinners in there to get some of the dregs out, shake them up. I'm going to use a lot of paint here. I'm doing, I think it's nearly 20 models. It's turned out to be, which is crazy, but good at the same time. Luckily I'm off work this week. Luckily I tore a muscle in my leg and it's a bit sore, so I had a couple of days off, and this gave me a chance to catch up here and go a little bit overboard. Now I'm adding a little bit of XF70, which is very dark green. So I added the darker green and it came up good. So now it's just a case of spending the next hour painting all these vehicles. And that's about how long it took. This is obviously speeded up and cut because you don't want to see an hour of me painting models green. That would be rather boring. There's the little Jeep, master wheels off there. The straws, drinking straws, large ones. I've got 3 different sizes of drinking straws. There's some more I'm using on the duck. It's the Saladin. It's a nice model, that. I like the Saladin. I made a Tamiya Saladin when I was a kid in a plastic kit. I always remember it. It's great. A lot of detail in it. That's a radio van, that one. That's the ambulance. I've got to make some decals for that. Some Red Cross decals. This one is a water cartage vehicle. Troops can't move if they can't drink. Need fresh water to keep them on their feet. There's the tank base, turret first, then the base. Second Saladin, I had 2 of those. Got to get a couple of wheels for that one. It's the Saracen base. Just a quick shout out to Ron Sindric, by the way. He's one of my viewers. He actually gave me the idea of this. He sent me an email and said, hey, it's D-Day celebrations coming up. Why don't you do a Matchbox D-Day commemorative video? And I thought, do you know what, Ron? That's not a bad idea. So thanks for that, Ron Sindric from Iowa. I owe you one, I guess you could say. That was a great idea. And I hope you get some enjoyment out of me mentioning your name. Also, I'd like to mention Michael Belafontaine, who sent me the black tank transporter, without which I couldn't have done this makeover. I would have had the Centurion tank, but without the transporter, it's really not complete. So thanks, Michael. I appreciate your contribution. Now I'm showing you how I've drilled and tapped all the posts here to receive these screws so I can put these models back together. I've also drilled and tapped the base of the turret there so that I can use another screw to hold the turret into position. Not too tight, of course. You want to let it swivel as it did when it was new. They look quite good. That's the reproduction barrel there. That's not bad at all. I'm happy. I can't say it twice. I'm happy with that. I just did. For this one, the threading wasn't as successful as I had hoped, so I used a small self-tapping screw that I had in a box of screws in the shed. I just tightened it up too much there, loosened it off. There we go, that's lovely. And this model has 4 of these rollers. They're not like wheels, they're track rollers, I guess you'd call them. 4 on the front, 4 on the back. And these are reproduction tracks that they work well, they're great size. Hope they last longer than the originals. A lot of these tanks are missing the original tracks. I think they just perished over time due to the material that they were made of. I'm putting in a couple of black screws there. I usually colour match them. I didn't have time because I'm rushing this now because I've bitten off more than I can chew to tell you the truth. I've got these silver rollers here on the half track for the small tracks and grey wheels on the front. I've also managed to get this American star decal for the bonnet. Now for the Saracen turret, I needed to fix it into place and I was unable to drill and thread the turret pivot point there, so instead I'm using just a Phillips head screwdriver and a small hammer, and I'm splaying the inside of the pivot point there. I've kind of riveted it into place using the screwdriver and hammer, and it worked quite well. Those wheels are good. I've got to take those out to my shed and secure them to the axle, so I'll do that in a little while. But I've also got to make some decals for my ambulance and put these decals on the half track and also on the ambulance. So I'm going to do that now, just with some warm water, tweezers and toilet paper and some cotton buds. Took me a while to work out. I had to go online, find out which orientation that star has to be. One of the points has to face exactly forwards. So I use that crease on the bonnet there as a guide to help me position it accurately. So now here's a reminder of what we started with. Here's the Centurion tank. Remember, I was only going to start with 4 models. And this is what it looks like now. It's got new tracks. It's got a new paint scheme on it. Refreshed paint. It's got a new barrel and machine gun in position. And it looks the business. Here's the half track with the melted wheels and the blue bonnet. No sticker, no tracks. And that came up beautifully. This is my favourite model today. I love it. I love the diversity of the half track format and the sticker on the bonnet. The grey front wheels and the silver rollers look good. The Saladin armoured car needed a new barrel and a facelift. Well, it got that. Look at that. That looks great. I'm very pleased with how all these models turned out in the end, even though it was a bit of a rush job, and I must admit I was panicking at one stage with so many axles and wheels lying around. I didn't know what went with what. Here's the Saracen. New gun on the turret. Spruced up tyres, new paint job. Cleaned up axles, chrome wheel tips, axle tips, looks good. And now for the final reveal of the complete battle group, as I call it, led by General Bernard Montgomery there driving up the front in the Land Rover. We've got trucks, half-tracks, armoured cars, water carriers, general trucks, ambulances, a couple of Saladins there. We've got an amphibious unit, some heavy tanks coming up the rear, and some more armoured personnel carriers. Here you can see some reinforcements storming the beaches. Everyone is working in concert to conquer Europe. Good luck, chaps, and please come home soon. Now, Kevin, what is this present you bought me that was going to blow me away? Oh, that's fantastic. A dummy grenade. Well done, Kevin. Very funny. Oh, fuck. I've got some caustic soda here and some hot water. I've got some tongs and a stirring stick. So, to start with, I'm going to place the hot water into the bowl. Fucking brilliant.